Welcome, thinkers, to a new season, Season 5, Episode 1 of Thinking Critically, a D&D discussion. Thank you ever so much for continuing to enjoy and support the show. Yeah, I've been a bit quiet recently, both in terms of episode output and also on the socials and stuff. Just life is not finding a way for me at the moment. I've taken on way too many hobbies, and we're reaching that time of the year in the UK at least where everybody's getting married and going on holidays, and the summertime is very much upon us. That being said, I am still looking for questions to do an AMA style, like we did at the end of Season 1 thing. So any questions at all about the show, the podcast, me, production of the show, how I get episodes, how we do the recording, the stream, the campaign, the characters in the campaign, what I've got planned, anything at all, then please drop a question below in the Spotify Ask Me Anything poll thing, if you scroll down, if you're on Spotify, or just on any of the socials, or DM me as well, those who are in the elite crew. Otherwise, yeah, let's get on with it. New season, who dis? Let's roll. Great episode coming up, actually. Really stoked for this one. One of the few instances where I've seen the guest in real life. Sounds weird to say ahead of time. And you'll understand when you hear it, but his passion is just infectious. So really stoked for this one. Very educational, very fun. So let's get on with the show. And today I'm joined by John Gent. Thank you ever so much for joining us today, John. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, good evening, Danilo. Name's John Gent, as you said. Day job is I'm a project manager, so dealing with quite heavy, serious, real stuff. But my passion is gaming, and in particular, our subject for this evening. Been playing since I was 13, so that's coming up for about 43 years now. I've been playing and DMing. My dad got me into it, and I just enjoy gaming. I just love gaming. I've had a shop, I've run clubs, but I just enjoy myself in the games.
Amazing. And I can't believe we haven't talked about this yet or not, but I'm also a project manager, but we won't talk about that.
Oh, wow.
Although I want to.
Let's not talk about that. No, let's not talk about
I want to keep the listeners. I don't want to drive them off in the first couple of minutes.
Let's not bore them.
Afterwards, we'll talk about project management stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But of course, today's topic is Ravenloft. So what does that mean to you in the D&D and wider ttrpg framework?
Wow. Ravenloft's a passion of mine. I am that old that I remember when the original I6 Ravenloft scenario came out in, I think it was about 1983. And it was kind of revolutionary when it came out, I think, because it was very different on a couple of levels. One, it's a very dark scenario. There's a very powerful bad guy in there. And the second part, that was the maps the cartography was just stunning. I think it won some awards, but it was definitely used a lot more. And of course, that was a start, and it's just grown. It's just grown. I mean, that was first edition advanced D&D. And of course, then it flipped over into second edition, then third, 3.5, fourth, and now in fifth. It's gone through every single edition, and it started from that one scenario for a sort of a mid-level character, and it just grew and grew and grew. And I think part of its charm, if that's the right word, is the potential dark nature of anything. It's got almost an entity to itself. It's a campaign world. I mean, you look at Eberron. Eberron is another favourite of mine, but that's got a really rich history. If you go into Ravenloft and you go back through it and the original books of the second edition, whatever, the history and the lore that's in there is really deep and rich, and there's a lot of background, and you get into that. There's it's like, wow, that's why that is like it is. That's why that person is like they are, and a lot of it is almost a tragedy. I mean, I think they've defined it now more that it's part of the Shadowfell. So it's actually, it's got a space. But if you go back to the original thinking of it when they first started doing it, it was a pocket realm. They called them pocket realms. And it was just this little bit. In the case of Ravenloft, it was Barovia, it was Castle Ravenloft, and it was the village of Barovia, and there was a little bit around it and what have you. And then that grew into something more. If you go to Curse of Strahd, which is the latest version, it's huge. There's different areas. But there were all these little pocket realms, and it spawned other areas that became part of the Ravenloft brand. And it was a completely different way of looking at it, I think, because they existed, but depending, and I think they purposely kept it mysterious, and they purposely kept a veil over it and never really divulged where it was or what it was. And depending on how you look, it was either a prison for bad guys, or it was a playground for bad guys. Depending on your point of view.
Yeah.
And who created it, what created it, it's up to you. You guys can make it up, as they say. And the very land itself is living. And early on in the Ravenloft, the original Ravenloft, if you started doing bad things, if your character, obviously not a paladin, but if your rogue decided that he was going to start stealing from the locals and stealing from the party and things like that, the land would react to that.
Okay.
And you would get sin points, if you like. And there were tables as well, because D&D loves a good table.
Yeah.
And you could do these different things. You get this lust for gold. You have shiny gold. Very sort of Gollum-esque with ring. You do anything to get it, and then you would, if you went further, it would reward you with maybe small fangs or little sharp claws on your fingers that were almost imperceptible, but would give you that extra attack. And I think that's what really gripped me, was the fact that the players just couldn't do what they wanted anymore without some kind of consequence.
Ooh.
And if you start being a bad guy and messing around, then things would happen. And that concept was just brand new to me. I mean, I was, early 20s, I would have been then, the DMing. And I picked Ravenloft off, and that was my realm. That's what I used to run. My dad used to run, and he would run, the mainstream stuff, a lot of the mainstream stuff. Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, Isle of Dread, all that sort of original stuff. My brother, who's also a gamer, a few years younger than me, his thing became Hollow World. I don't know if you remember Hollow World. Have you heard of that one? Hollow World. That was another campaign from D&D. It was based around the center of the planet.
Oh, okay.
So and that was his thing. He did that. Another friend of mine, player, still gaming now, Dark Sun, was his
that
thing.
One rings a bell. Yeah.
And and we all had our own little sort of areas where we'd run, and Ravenloft was mine, and I read up on it. I just loved it. Just loved it. To me, it's, you can have a lot of fun with it as a DM.
Yeah.
As a DM, you can have a lot of fun. Quite often when you're running a scenario as a DM, you want to do something, but it doesn't kind of fit with the story. Or, am I going to annoy my players if I do that? With Ravenloft, you can do that, and and actively irritating your players to get them to do something. And it's just magic. It's just, you can just, I'm going to do this because I can. and it just kind of turned it on its head. And then, of course, you've got the main man himself, who is, an immensely powerful, completely evil, single-minded nutter, really, but very clever, very gentlemanly, polite, almost honest to a fault, honourable. And you've got this arch nemesis there, and then everything that goes around it. I mean, yeah, it's huge for me. It's huge.
Yeah, well, I love the passion. It's very clear through how you talk about it, how engaged you are with Ravenloft, which is lovely to see. There's a couple of things there. So before we talk about well, anything actually, of course, I forgot to mention up the front that we met at the RPGaming in Faversham in Kent event
We did,
a
yeah.
good few weeks back from the guys from the boys from the Baltic Star, which had been in the previous episode, and you took me and one of my players through a Ravenloft one shot, right? Kind of,
Pretty much, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So that was officially, well, thank you for that, because it was really fun to play with one of my
It's all right.
players, to be on
My
the same
pleasure.
side of the screen from him for a change. And also that was really my first experience, not to like out myself too much on the show of my lack of experience, but the first thing I wanted to talk about here that really piqued my interest in your initial discussion there was how you said the world reacts to the players, because that is a problem you see time and time and time again on DM advice subreddits and RPG Stack Exchange and everything, of being like,
Yeah,
my players are doing this, or how do I encourage this behavior, which is the nicer way of putting it, or how do I stop them doing that, or why are they
yeah,
doing this? There's so many questions, and I do think, done correctly, of course, it can be quite an elegant solution to have that living world, as it were. So they're not just like in, the material plane and they mug a shopkeeper and that's it. Like there's no, yes, oh, there's police might chase them down. Okay, but they're heroic adventurers, so like they don't care. But to
yeah,
have something, in not inhumane, well, yeah, inhumane in a way, but like this unknowable, unbargainable feature just affect you and the environment you're in because of your own actions, I think is
yeah,
one very good elegant way to be like, you're doing objectively evil things or bad things, like morally wrong.
yeah,
Like something is, the world is a reflection of, and at any time there's a reflection, you hold up a mirror to the player characters, I love. And that is one way to do it, to be like, look, the world is now a mirror of your actions. Try and be the good change you want to see in the world, of course.
it's great if you. I mean, the gaming. I mean, certainly my gaming. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of double entendres. There's a lot of leg pulling, and there's comical themes that repeat themselves. Yeah, that's part of the game. We have a lot of fun. But something I have found, and particularly like with Ravenloft, with the game I play, is sometimes the players get just a little bit too cocky, and they're just a little bit, we're the heroes. Yes, you are the heroes, and we can do what we want, and we can do this, and we can do that, I mean, there's a whole completely different conversation about the D&D 5e player characters, the heroes being way too powerful, and we could spend all evening doing that. But with what I've got at my fingertips, easily have at my fingertips, let's put it like that, rather than you can suddenly get attacked by a band of 50 orcs, and they're kind of like saying, well, we're out shopping, how does that happen? You can get away with that in Ravenloft, and I have had my players, experienced players I might add, literally strutting around the place deliberately and on purpose, scaring the locals. This is Barovia. It's dark. It's depressing. Even when the sun is at its highest peak, it's overcast. It's like a wet Wednesday afternoon in November. All the time, and people are scared, genuinely scared, and there's that feeling of despair and horror and despondency running as a theme through. And then, of course, you've got the player characters that are just running around doing what they want and going boo to the local kick children who run away screaming.
Yeah.
And I had a party doing that. And I thought, you know what, I'm sick of this. I'm just so sick of this. You are powerful, yes, and you are walking through a few encounters that I'm putting in your way. So I'm going to up the ante. So I had them, they were visited by the man himself. And they were nowhere near the right level to take him on, and he just set, I mean, spoiler alert, he set 3 hags on them from Curse of Strahd. There's 3 hags in there, and I just completely and totally spanked them with these hags whilst he stood back and watched from afar, and they were playthings, and I took all the characters down to death saves apart from one, and then I gave them a way out. I did a little bit of speed gaming, which is what we did at the end of our session.
Oh yes, yeah,
and which gets the adrenaline pumping and the blood pumping, and I gave them and I got them out of it, and I just the bad guy just walks away laughing, and it served really well. But they loved it; they absolutely loved it. They said afterwards, but it brought them back down. So from
humbled.
that point on, yes, that's a really good word. They were humbled and were just a little bit more cautious and careful about what they did. I said, it's great. You're really doing well. You've got such a reputation. And they didn't really twig. And then one of the guys said, what do you mean reputation? I said, well, everybody knows who you are. This party of 5 adventurers wandering around Barovia, you might as well have a big flag above your head saying protagonists. and it was just like a magnet.
Yeah.
And I can do that because within the mechanics of Ravenloft, you can do that. It almost instantly. You can just draw in bad guys. That's not something you can do in a town, or not easily do in a town.
No, not at all. Yeah. That's the struggle that I have, and why some of my later chapters in my campaign are just more far flung and exotic, because it gets boring quickly to be. It's another bunch of assassins in the street jumping you, or like you can't have very outlandish things unless you're building to some kind of apocalyptic cataclysm, of course. Hags, tough. This is very good. Well, good or bad timing, depending on how you think about it. But they actually just killed my one and main player character. One hag did last Sunday, 4 or 5 days ago. My guy had it coming. It's from the actual play podcast I'm in, and he's a wizard. Chronomancy, which is like I think one of the critical role classes, but basically level I think we're 13 wizard plus chronomancy. He was just very difficult to hit.
Powerful, very powerful.
Yeah, so you can deny crits, you can deny attack rolls, you can knock people out of their spell casting, you can make people lose turns and stuff. And obviously I do that all from a different postcode. Like, well, the fighting is over there. I'm nice and safe over here. So I, as I said to the guys, like, he never went below half health for months and months, like 6 months, 12 months of gaming. He's just never been below half health. But then, 3 of us, we fought this hag and some other creature. I'm not sure what it was, more melee focused beast. And between the two of them, it didn't take once they got a few hits off, he was down. Now, I do goad the DM and just tell him I'm invincible and I can't be killed all the time. That's what I mean by having my character having it coming. It was like he had a big target on his back. But his one final trick is the ring of mind shielding, and when you die, your soul goes into the ring. So he's kind of still alive. He's still not dead. It's one last contingency plan. But that hag's like, I know all too well now how spicy they can be, because it happened to me 4 days ago. All too fresh.
The thing is about a realm lord as well. Strahd is a realm lord. Oh God, Aslan. I'm dragging up some names here. Aslan's a realm lord. There's, they could take any form. These pocket realms. I've played a game session. My dad ran it, and I always remember it. There were 4 of us playing, and the entire one-shot scenario, probably about a 4-hour game, was based in the music room of the house.
Wow.
With this guy on a piano. We couldn't leave. You'd open the window and there was nothing, like hyperspace.
Yeah, a void.
You can't stick your hand out because there's nothing there,
Yeah.
And we were in this room, and the object was to get out somehow. And we were trying. Of course, we got this guy playing the piano, and we're talking to this guy. He's a very well-read, very well-bred person. He's just playing this harpsichord and chatting with us and offering us tea and things like that. And then part of it was we were made aware that every sort of minute in here was like an hour out there. So if you stayed there long enough, you eventually, when you were released, you just died because you were like 150 years old.
Oh wow,
like
yeah.
So that was the urgency to get out, and we just could not figure out how to get out. And the long story short is this was a pocket realm from Ravenloft that he picked up and used, and it was the harpsichord. The harpsichord was evil, and the guy playing the harpsichord and the music was creating, the realm, or sustaining the realm. So you had to destroy the harpsichord, and we didn't get to that point. We got to, I think, within 1 or 2 hit points of destroying the harpsichord. We never actually did it. We found another way out. There was another way out. But I think where I'm going with this is, realm lords could be anything. But the beauty of a realm lord is Strahd, even if you kill him, even though he's already undead, but even if you properly kill him, within a week, he's back. If you go back to the original Ravenloft campaign, his soul, if you like, or lack of soul, his dark soul, would inhabit the body of a local, possibly even a dead PC or a nearly dead PC, and then would slowly, over a period of about a week, transform back into the man himself.
Oh wow!
But he would have all his former memories, and he'd mark your card. So that was another thing that the bad guy was undefeatable in a sense.
Yes, yeah.
And that adds to the level of despair, if you like.
I was going to say that is such a, like, even if they quote unquote win, they've still not won. That is such a evil, like Machiavellian level of despair is the best word for it. Where you're just like, this is that absolutely what what I love about it is that they're going for a theme, and they're all in. They've jumped all into that theme, like of that depression, despair, bleakness of like there's no future. It permeates everything from the ground that they walk on, interactions with NPCs, all the way up to the big mechanical crunchy boss fight at the end that's very gamey. Is like even that feeds into the theme.
Yeah, the whole thing is circular. It's that, and then it goes back to that question: is it a prison for bad guys, for evil thing? Has some good entity created this just to lock these people away, or is it created by their own despair? If you read Strahd's backstory, it's a tragic love story. It's a classical tragical love story. But is he creating his own despair? Is he a self-fulfilling prophecy? And the same with the other realms, and that's just so different. I mean, I'm a PC gamer and a console gamer as well, and there are a few games out there where you can't actually win. The object is just to survive, and they're just so addictive because you can't win. All you got to do is survive, and that's kind of where Ravenloft is. You don't just ride off into the sunset with trumpets blaring and flags waving with the pot of gold and the
treasure
the treasure or whatever on your arm. You don't do that. It's like, wow, we survived, we got out of that one. we chalk that down to experience, and then of course then you got the whole mist thing, whereby the original one was the mists that you couldn't escape, and I did that to great effect. But the trouble is then whenever I was DMing and the party saw even the sniff of fog or mist or anything like that, they just run the opposite direction. We're just not going anywhere near it. So I invented different ways of getting you into Ravenloft. I mean, you did that in the game we played, which was the logging camp, if you remember.
Yeah.
I wrote that myself, and I've run it 3 or 4 times, and it's always gone in different ways. You had the werewolf, which you so rightly predicted.
Yep.
By the way, your role playing with Ian, was brilliant. I loved it.
Thank you.
It was really you dropped into character, just bang. Like within 5 minutes, you were there, and it's like, and all of a sudden you got principles, and it's like, wow, this is great. I'm going to go with this. You're having arguments about personality differences. It's fantastic. So it was really good. I love that. But you. Where you were within that, I mean, again, spoiler alert, I'm hopefully going to write this up properly, or I'm trying to write it up properly and maybe put it through drive-through, I don't know.
Yeah.
Where you were within the logging camp was real, if you like.
Yeah.
But a short distance away, you didn't pick up on it, but you were surrounded by woods, but the trees were different.
Right.
and you didn't actually pick up that. I mean, again, that's the mechanical, perception rolls or survival rolls, something like that. But you didn't pick up on it, and it's subtle. It's really subtle. But it's Ravenloft as a realm, as a plane of existence. Again, going right back to the original, used to seep in between the cracks of your reality.
Yeah.
They even brought out a box set called Nightmare Lands.
Sounds pleasant.
Yeah, it was deadly. And the main protagonist in there, I can't remember, but he was basically a nightmare lord, and he used to feed off of nightmares and bad dreams of the real world. But his plane of existence would exist within, your REM sleep, if you like.
Yeah.
And what it was it was depicted as little bubbles. It was like a beach scene, but all these little glass bubbles, and then you could look into and see people's dreams. And he used to psychically feed off it, and whatever. And that was again it was one of those box sets that they brought out, I think, just because they could. I've still got them somewhere, but again, that's part of it. It just permeates everything. So the whole thing is cyclical. And
yep.
With what you were playing right at the end, I don't know if you picked up on it. I hope you did. That you'd actually transported.
Yes,
you were actually in Ravenloft, and the guy you met, was the main guy.
Yep.
But I think you were a paladin.
I was the rogue, I think, who I think died, and then Ian was playing the pally who carried me out to safety.
That's right.
Well, the body out at least.
See, that's another aspect of it. Some might argue, so, well, why did you let the character die? Why would you let the character die? But okay, mechanically, you failed your saves.
Yeah.
But it adds depth, huge amounts of depth to an ongoing campaign that you've lost this companion.
Yeah, I'm loyal to the story. I'm happy if that's how it happens, then that's how it happens. I'd rather the story be, genuine than there being any like fluffs around it. I'm loyal to the story, as I like to put it. So and it also gave the paladin, Ian's character, a big, huge, like, epic moment where he's like in the snow holding the dead body of his friend and being shouting to the sky. It's classic. You can't beat it.
Yeah, a little blood trail. That the whole crescendo music from Monty Coney or whoever at the end of it. Yeah, I use that a lot to build passion and to reinforce enemies within the game, because I found it time and time again where I do a little bit of that. Maybe a character dies or gets badly injured, or on a more adult theme, I've had sacrifices, often not of adults.
Oh wow, yeah.
It's and you have to be careful with that, obviously, but and it brings it in, and it's just like a massive magnetizing thing to the party, and one or two characters will often pick up on that, and then all of a sudden, wow, they've got some drive, they've really got some push, and then they're getting into it, and then you're into the whole immersion thing. And I think with Ravenloft, you have to have that buy-in. It's one shots are okay, but they don't tend to be as much fun as playing a darker campaign, if you like. Yeah, the whole thing just feeds off itself, or can feed off itself, as you found out.
Yes, one of a DM from my other game that I play in. I know he DMs another game that I don't play in, which is in Ravenloft or Shadowfell at least, and he is very much reveling in. Actually, I think he's torn, if he's being honest with himself, because on the one hand he's reveling in that oppressive bleakness and throwing exotic strong creatures at his enemies, but then on the other hand he's like, oh, they might die like all the time, like this, I've got to be super careful, otherwise they're just and so do they. So like the stress is just like good. I mean, in a good way, like the good stress of both of them is both the players and the DMs is increased, because it's that we've actually got to really try to survive here. It's now not just a walk in the park. Like, you're walking through the forest, you survival check. You find berries, you eat well. There's a stream. Moving on. It's like no streams, no berries.
No. And you can use things like exhaustion levels to great effect to that, and because it all fits, it all adds in, and I say to people with the Ravenloft, sometimes they say, well, if it's Ravenloft, we're not going. But I say, running away is an option.
Mm-hmm.
It is a genuine option. It is okay to run screaming in the opposite direction if you feel that what you're up against is quite bad. And I think that addresses a lot of the powerful characters game. You can get bogged down in the mechanics of it, and you've probably had a podcast based around this. If you start to stick to the mechanics, the player's always going to win. You just will, because the odds are stacked
in their favor. Yeah.
If you bring in that mysterious storytelling aspect, that horror aspect, that dark aspect, it sort of evens it up. And as a DM, I've had so much fun with it. So much fun. I've had the same party that I spanked with the hags ended up at okay, spoiler alert, the Amber Temple, which I don't know if you know that. So the Amber Temple, without giving too much away, is this ancient cathedral-like building in the side of a mountain that is made out of amber.
Oh, wow.
So it's building blocks. So it's very impressive.
Yeah.
What's even more impressive, that's what's imprisoned there, are ancient, evil, dark gods that have actually been imprisoned. Doesn't actually really go into how they got imprisoned, but you've got these little cells, and it's like, yeah, that's a really nasty bad guy in there, and he's imprisoned, and so you've got to be careful. And there's lots of monsters around, and the same party that came in that were very blasé and what have you. I just twisted the story. I twisted a monster a little bit. One of my players got upset because they're not supposed to do that, and I said, well, the trouble is, you're just going to walk through everything. And I explained it to him, and he said, no, that's fine. I'm happy with that. And I had them actually, sort of like this 10th level party who are very powerful. And as a team, I've been playing with these guys 15, 18 years. And as a team, we work really, really well. We all have our own different roles.
Yeah.
So we can take on a lot. And I had them either sneaking about or running for cover in this temple, and that is just priceless. You've got 10th level characters, 10th level mages hitching up their robes and running hell for leather because they're being shot at by something they can't see, or and what have you. And then you've got the frontline fighters going, that I'm not going in there, and that's and as a DM, that's beautiful, that's priceless, because you can have this standoff with them for hours. And it makes them think. And at the end of it, I'm, not trying to blow my own trumpet or anything like that, but at the end of it, they say, God, that was awesome. I've never had a game like that. It's awesome. And they still talk about it. And this was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that impact and being allowed to do that.
Yeah, I love those moments where there's that cascading. Shall we run? Are we running? We're running now. Okay, everyone run.
Are we going?
Yeah, that starting from one person being like, is this time to run? To then so rapidly cascade into like, yeah, everyone's dashing, dash, run.
Yeah.
Those are classic moments. As I said earlier on, this Curse of Strahd and stuff is never played in it properly. Played in Eberron before. I've run Eberron adjacent things in my homebrew campaign. Obviously, kind of Forgotten Realmsy, traditional fantasy stuff I'm very familiar with.
Yeah.
But yeah, Barovia and that I have the least experience with, and everyone keeps telling me it's great, and I've also got this reverence for it now that I almost don't want to read it just in case it spoils it for me, But one question I had then, all the way back in previous episodes of what was it, like lore? I think maybe one on geography and stuff, where the guests have educated me on where things sit in the world and how the history of the Forgotten Realms and stuff has happened. Because that's a weakness of mine. Very much not into the. I've not read any books or fiction or anything. It's all very much let me get my Lego blocks and create my own world. So where does Ravenloft end and Shadowfell begin, or where does Barovia end and Ravenloft begin? Like, how are these three, Shadowfell, Barovia, and Ravenloft? How those three things fit together?
Wow. Do you know what? I don't really know. Because I, like you, I've never read any of the books. You know, the whole Lord Soth series that they did. That's another great. That's a Death Knight.
Oh wow!
English Death Knight. They are awesome. Absolutely. Just if you do see one of them, just talk nicely to it. But yeah, where does it start? Where does it end? See, I'm going back.
Yes.
To I prefer the older style. I'm not a fan of things where that stops, that starts, and it's clean cut. I'm not.
Yeah.
The whole purpose to me of Ravenloft and its whole genre, if you like, if that's the right word, is that it can be anywhere and everywhere. And it's this thing that's growing, and it wants more. It wants more. I mean, I think it was third edition or 3.5 where they first started to coalesce it a little bit more and give it some geography,
some physicality.
Physicality is a good word. And they had this great it was called the Great Cataclysm, where various things happened, and this realm disappeared and that realm became it came into being, and whatever. And then there's things like, if you go back to second edition, there was a complete box set on the Islands of Terror, the Isle of Terror, and there's a whole archipelago of these islands that are all just little dotted realms, with different themes. There's a swamp theme, there's a prehistoric jungles of Chult theme, and there's, it's always been, as far as I'm concerned, it's always been everywhere. The fact that they've attached it to the Shadowfell now, and it's part of the Shadowfell, I'm not quite sure why they did. They probably just to give it some physicality or tangibility, or I mean, who knows where they go with these things? But I see it as everywhere. I don't see it as a singular place. It's a plane of existence. But where that plane of existence is, who knows?
One thing that I think, obviously, I'm familiar with 5th edition, is that it is very, from what I've understand and what I've read, it's very compartmentalized. So that, like, to get to another plane of existence, it's like a whole bloody 6th level spell, and you blink and then you're there, and it is that hard cut. And I know that there are gates or portal, that exist on the material plane, where it's you can kind of walk through it, and it seeps through and affects like 3 miles around it. Yes, but even still, that's very static. It's like a place, you go there and that is the portal to the plane of fire, because it's in a volcano. What a surprise. That's surrounded by fire and lava. Okie dokie. I can't think of a better place for an entry to the portal to the plane of fire. But there is something very much to be said about that. I love the idea of this, the pervasive threat and oppressiveness of Ravenloft, not only in Ravenloft, but it's this ever overarching threat even on the material plane. Like, anywhere we go, we could go into someone's basement, and just because of what's happened there, that like every step is a threat to being in this miserable place.
It's and quite often you can read it as you are drawn there. Particularly if you've got a paladin in the party. And I'm going to say this anyway: if you've got a paladin in Ravenloft, it's like having a big orange flashing beacon on your head. It's just like everybody knows where you are, and the bad guys do. And again, go right back to if a paladin entered the realm, Strahd would immediately know where they were, and always know where they are.
Wow!
Because you're ultimate good, he's ultimate bad. So you've got this yin and yang, and his minions, his spies as well, report back to him. The crows, the wolves, they all report back to him. So you can be. I've had parties drawn into Ravenloft on on false invitations, just literally so we can play. And they've been on the prime material plan. I'll just bring them in. And do you know what? Players don't seem to mind.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't. They can kind of see it coming. They kind of know, okay, we're playing Ravenloft. I've got the Ravenloft screen up. Giveaway.
Big neon sign, Ravenloft behind you.
Yeah, don't look behind. And they kind of know it's coming. The fun I have and the fun they have is building that subtlety into it, so it's not blindingly obvious. And like I said, that pervasiveness you're not safe. You are not safe. And again, that's part of what I like about it. I mean, maybe that's just how I play, but other planes are very much there. Eberron is very much there. I mean, there is or was an add-on where you could add a couple of Ravenloft-esque area to Eberron. There was this crossover. They did this crossover because Ravenloft is so huge. It's a thing on its own. It's got its own entity, and they've done that. And they did a Victorian style called the Mask of the Red Death, which was 1910, 1920s, 1890s. Within that sort of time frame, and it was Gothic horror. So there's that whole, it's spawned, such diversity across all of the planes. So to me, it is everywhere because it is everywhere. And that's the fun of it. That is the fun of it. It's just, as I said, as a DM, you can have so much fun. I've TPK parties, on a whim, not on a whim, but I've got them to a place where they are absolutely backed into a corner, and you've got this big bad vampire, and he is a vampire, and he's just playing with them and toys with them and things like that. There is a lot of humour in there as well. There's a bit in Strahd where he sends, or he can send, his coach and 4 horses down to the party and basically invites them up for dinner. And I've done that, and I've had the party climb in the coach and go and have dinner with the man, and come away. And I've had a party that refused to get in the coach, and that was an interesting one. And it's just like, okay, how do I do with this, and they just literally refused to get in the coach. And then I heard the story of another party. The coach was sent to them, so they probably killed all the horses and ate them for lunch. Just to annoy the guy, and you can have a lot of fun with it. It's very flexible, very, very flexible.
That's the problem with doing this bloody show, is that I come away every time with like, ooh, I gotta add another 6 months to my campaign because I want to do all this extra new stuff now that I'm interested in.
You don't have to do 6 months. You can do a couple of sessions. I mean, I've used it. I mean, a good friend of mine, Simon, who was also at the Faversham Con.
Oh yeah,
he was running I think he was running Coriolis, which is a sci-fi game, and we've double DM'd. We swapped DMs, and he's literally brought his ongoing campaign to a pause. Work gets in the way, as you know. Often the higher up the food chain you are, the more demands they place on you.
Indeed,
as you well know. So he said, "Look, John, I've got to back away for can you take over for 3 months?" And we've transitioned across, and it's literally gone into a basement, as you said. And you come out and it's like, hang on, this isn't Kansas anymore. Where the hell are we? And then you drop it on them, and they're like, and then the penny drops, and it's like, oh shit, So yeah, is this what I think it is? Or I don't know what I think it is. And then you can do that, and then you can just drop people back. And so you don't necessarily have to do a 6-month campaign. One thing that does a little irritate me is the Curse of Strahd is the latest incarnation.
Yeah.
But there's House of Strahd was another big one. Expedition to Castle Ravenloft, I think, was the first campaign based around Ravenloft. And as you know, campaign books they're thick books, and there's 6, 9, 12, 18 months worth of play within that. And you quite often get people saying, I'm just going to run this. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. You've got that richness and that history, and to make it worthwhile, you need to sort of study that a bit and get into it.
Yeah.
And drop in and out. I mean, the original game was you went into the mists, you couldn't get out, you defeated the bad guy, you got out of the mists, it would release you because the Realm Lords control the borders.
Mm-hmm.
So Strahd himself controls the mist that doesn't allow you out. So once he's, dead, temporarily dead, the mists dissipate, you can walk back out of Ravenloft. That was the whole initial idea, going in and coming out, which kind of works for shorter campaigns, and you can do that in a subtle way. If you find these portals, these mystical portals, you can cross over. So you can drop an in and out of it as you see fit. Just to run it cold as a campaign, it's kind of lost. It's kind of, you're paying what, 30, 40 pound for a book, or what, sort of $45-50 from the States. That's a chunk of money. It's a chunk of money, and there's a lot of prep time there. It's just dabble with it, just play with it, just do what you want with it. You don't have to run the campaign. There's plenty of bits out there, and there's plenty of source material that you can draw on just to do that. And for people that like homebrewing, you can make your own realm. You can put anybody else in there. I have got a character that is in Ravenloft, one of my players, and she is there. He wanted to retire the character, and we did it, and there was a big fight at the Amber Temple right at the very end.
Yeah.
And he said, "I'm going to retire Livy. I'm going to retire my character," and she is now part of his domain, and she's trying to work out, or he's trying to work out, is he a bad guy? Is she a bad guy? Because she wasn't exactly, an angel in what she did. Or is she the good guy? And, and we've got this ongoing 1-to-1 that we pick up every now and then. We'll have a 3 or 4 hour session, just the pair of us. And it's pretty much pure role playing about what she's doing, why she's there, what does she want to do? This is what's going on. And you're building this backstory. And eventually we are going to get to a point where it's just going to be a one-on-one, and it's going to be another boss fight.
Yep.
That's what we're building to. And that's just pure Ravenloft. That's just purely off the back of that. That's the power of it. That is the power of it. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. But it's so versatile. You can, the things with Faerun and, the Forgotten Realms and Eberron, there's quite a lot of set things. I mean, particularly with Eberron, there's a lot of the different houses, the politics.
Yes.
I don't really do politics. None of my characters do politics really, which is, strange. And I get bogged down in all that. This house doesn't like that house because of this House Kundarak, and it doesn't. Yeah. And you've got a lot of, you would do, as House Kundarak, you would do this.
Yes.
And it's not rigid, but it's fairly linear in some aspects. Whereas Ravenloft is just, it's just a complete free for all.
That reminded me of talking different houses, conflicts with each other. I'm currently preparing an Underdark area for one of the remaining chapters in my homebrew campaign, and they're going to go to like the Drow city.
Yeah.
And I've made a bunch of 5 houses in there that each specialize in like a different form of, one's like just warcraft, one's like assassination, one's like poisoncraft, another house is torture. But the simplest thing was they all hate each other. So they're always fighting. If the Drow society is, historically, they're always trying to murder and assassinate each other and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was actually quite refreshingly simple, because it was like, I actually don't need any politics, because they all share the same politics of we want to kill each other. And that's simple. There's you don't have to remember.
And then throw your characters in there, and they've got to negotiate between the houses.
Yes. Something I haven't got the finer details, but yes, I'm looking forward to showing them each different house in all its grotesque glory there. One thing I wanted to talk, we're going off piece because I want to get your thoughts on something, but one of my players is a warlock, and his patron is the Raven Queen. Again, very much showing my ignorance here in terms of like how it all fits together. I've just kind of like get it off the Forgotten Realms wiki and take that as gospel half the time. Have you got any familiarity with with the Raven Queen and how they fit into. I feel like they're maybe I'm getting like my Shadowfell. Maybe she's like more Shadowfell, and when they've brought it all together, there's now the streams have crossed and they're all kind of similar. I'm not sure. Have you got any thoughts there?
Yeah. I'll say this is really interesting because the character I was talking about, Livy, is a warlock whose patron is the Raven Queen. So it's exactly what you're talking about. Now, Livy's backstory is that she no longer wants to serve the Raven Queen. So this is how I dealt with that. If I tell you how I dealt with it, it might give you an insight of what I think. So the Raven Queen, when you're in Ravenloft, there is a school of thought, and I use this, and I use it mechanically on a dice roll because of the evil nature of the realm, if you like. If you do something nasty, quite often it can be magnified. So you might cast a spell like Toll the Dead. Yeah, lovely spell, very simple. But I ran this in a game, and this will bring you around to the Raven Queen as well. So keep me on track. I told you I can go off piece sometimes myself. So they would cast Toll the Dead. Because of the nature of the spell and what it was doing, I would roll a dice, and I gave it something like a 20% chance. If I rolled under 20%, it was actually more effective. Did more damage, slightly more damage, not game changing, but enough. But the toll of the bell was a much louder. The drawback on that was it attracts whatever wants to listen to it or hears it. So that was that. So that was a little mechanic that I dropped in. Livy's background is she no longer wants to serve the Raven Queen and she wants out, basically. But as you know, she's made a pact, pact sword and all the rest of it. Yeah. So the whole thing is very entwined, and it's very, very difficult to get away. But she's on Barovia. She's in Ravenloft. So you've got, yes, there's the Shadowfell there, and you've got Barovia there, and you've got the Raven Queen over here, but then you've got somebody like Strahd going, hang on a minute, this is my backyard. And part of it was we had another character who was a half-orc barbarian, played by another friend of mine, who didn't get on with Livy. There wasn't a lot of animosity there, but he didn't always agree with some of her methods, let's put it like that. And he got quite annoyed towards the end with her because he again, he's another powerful player, and as he's true to his story, he's true to his background, and I love that in a game. He just, as I said, you and Ian, you just dropped into these two characters, and it was fantastic. There was game on from the very first minute. And he's very true to himself. Livy's obviously true to herself. And I gave her an out. I gave him an out for a character. So, right, you can disassociate yourself, because I had these voices in his head, and it was actually the land talking to him. It was the realm talking to him, because the realm could see that there was potential here for another patron. There was another convert to my cause. And I gave him an out, and he took it. And then the Raven Queen then approached the barbarian and said, do you want vengeance? And he kind of went, yeah. Well, this is my problem. You see, and I've been spurned by Livy, who no longer wants me.
Yes.
And you don't do that to me because I'm the Raven Queen.
Yep.
And how about, do you want some vengeance? Do you want to be my champion? Do you want to be her nemesis? And of course he's gone, absolutely. Bang. And it was just like, I've sucked him in.
Yeah.
And he's now in league with the Raven Queen. Livy is no longer there. So has, the pack sword and various powers have gone. But then she's been rewarded by the land and has now her own little pocket dimension, if you like, within Ravenloft, protected from the Raven Queen. But then there's this overarching. Now, all of a sudden, it's the Raven Queen's got the arse with Strahd or the land, and vice versa. So you've got this, you've taken it up a notch, and you've got 10th level characters that are now, arch enemies, and that's great, because there was some sparking going on, and there was some fantastic role playing in around the table, brilliant role playing around the table, and then you've got up that level. It's like the two battle cruisers are now engaging themselves above your planet, and it's all kicking off in space, sort of thing, and that feeds down to the two, and I think you just almost take it away from the players as a choice. Where you give them a couple of choices and see which way they go, and they absolutely took it, and it was brilliant. It was brilliant because yes, it's the Shadowfell, yes, it's the Raven Queen, but the way I interpreted it was, it's still separate from it.
Okay,
does that make sense?
Yeah. In a way, I mean, I'm reassured that I'm basically on the right tracks as it is anyway. Which is the most important thing I was after. They may well end up going. They have a cubic gate, so a cube that one of each side takes you to a different plane of existence. Again, one reason why I was like, I just want you to go to these cool places without having to faff around.
Yeah.
And one of those is the Shadowfell, which he knows the Raven Queen is probably there, so they might go there at some point. And if I could throw in some of this historical lore of Ravenloft style while they're there, like it's already going to be mauve and purple and oppressive, and there's ravens everywhere, and everyone's sad. But if I can throw in this other, like, and also there's vampires. And I've not mentioned Strahd to them once. They know I've never read the books or touched it. So I think if I was like, when they teleport in, if they appeared like in his court, then they'd be like, yeah, we forgot he lives here too.
yeah.
This complicates matters.
Well, then you could have an uneasy alliance with him if there's a problem with the Raven Queen, or she's overstepping. I mean, who knows? Who knows what they do? When they're at that level, they're powerful beings, entities, creatures, and they still squabble amongst themselves. It's like the ancient dragons. You get a gold one, you get a red one. They're gonna have words. These huge ancient creatures are going to start kicking off above your head, and so you can use that absolutely. Again, it's so flexible. You can do what you want with it, and as a DM, you can have such great fun with it. Such great fun with it.
Yes, I'll have to tell them not to listen to this episode, because that's.
Well, you don't have to tell them where it is. They don't have to appear there. They could appear. It could appear in his court. It could appear in his dungeons. They could appear somewhere, and you just have him turn up. This however way you want him. This tall, devilishly handsome man, very well dressed, very well spoken, very well read. In a black cape with a blood red lining, and and it'll go over the heads of some of them, I suspect, and others will go, is that who we think it is? I don't know. And all of a sudden there's another dimension. So
yeah, that'd be good. Is there anything you wanted to talk about that we haven't hit yet, or not quite got to?
Oh God, I don't know. I talk quite a lot, don't I? So I don't know. It's just I don't know. I think the overarching thing is Ravenloft is great.
That's it. That's all you have to say. That's the end of the episode.
That's it. Done. Any new DMs out there and whatever, and that goes back to what I said earlier. If you want to run Curse of Strahd straight off the bat, particularly if you've got new players, don't do it. Just step away from it, learn a little bit more, learn the art of storytelling, and come back to it, or drop in and out. It's perfectly acceptable to drop in and out of a campaign. You don't have to do it back to back, end to end. You can just drop in and try it. And Ravenloft, use it for. You can experiment with it. If you want to homebrew it, you can absolutely homebrew it. You can do your own thing. You can do your own monsters. You can do your own realms. You can do your own spells if that's what you're into. It's not one of my things. But yeah, it's just take it easy with it, and just and then when you're ready, just go into it. But go into it feet first. You have to go all the way in. You have to build that tension. You have to build that atmosphere. You have to build that sense of danger, which is, I mean, kind of what I did with you and Ian at the end. Did you notice when you were coming out of the temple, I made you roll repeated dex rolls and things like that, but very
I remember,
quickly?
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
Well, it's sad because my guy died, but that's the that's the nature of the beast. But no, I mean, absolutely. Like, it's not often players are forced to. Like, sometimes I'll do it. I'll be like, make a call now, or I'm making it for you. Doesn't happen that often, and I think it is actually quite a powerful tool to compress that and do a lot in a short space of time, because it's doubling down, as you just said. Like, I'm really nailing that. Like, we're in a hurry here. It's not just one check I'm asking you to do quickly. Everything you're doing now is A, critically important, and B, you have no time to
you've
to think
no
about
time
it.
to think. Yeah, you've got no time to think. That gets people going, because they start doing things naturally.
Yes.
You know, and it all of a sudden, oh, hang on, I didn't expect that. And that's great for DM. Somebody starts doing something you don't expect. It's like, oh well, I'm gonna get, and that's character building, I think they call it, in the opposite direction. But yeah, no, it's I get passionate about it, as you can tell, and I get really serious about it, and I love running it, and I love the lore behind it. And I would just say, read some of the older stuff. You know, some of the second edition stuff, the Van Richten's guides.
Yes.
You know, a lot of the stats won't make a lot of sense because it's all converted now, but the story, the lore, the history, the reasoning, you know, if you actually read Strahd's backstory and his history, the guy's 2,000 years old, give or take. He's a ancient patriarchal vampire. It's very, very powerful. But the history behind it was that somebody once said, well, if he's so powerful, why isn't there more of them? I mean, it's a simple again, I'm not going to spoil it. You read the history on it, and a lot of them go insane, because if we often say that when somebody gets to maybe 70 or 80 years old, they've had enough.
Yeah.
You can imagine that at 1,500 years old.
Yeah.
And you've seen stuff and you've done stuff, and you know, you've seen loved ones come and go multiple times, and possibly children grow up and not be around anymore and whatever. And it mentally, it will affect you. And the whole thing that they go insane and take their own lives, if you like, it's really powerful. And then all of a sudden they become something. You know, it's not just a bunch of stats.
Yes.
It's all of a sudden, this guy's got, wow, this is who he is. This is why, and then he takes on a personality, and that's the same for all of the realm lords. There's often backstories, tragic backstories as to why they are where they are, and just absorb. I would say, if you're going to run Ravenloft, absorb some of that, and use that, and play him, her, it, whatever it happens to be, as you would a player. As you would a player, and I think you'll gain a lot more from it. There's a lot to be gained from it, and I think people just skip the surface, and I think they just need to dive in a little deeper and take it on board, much the same as you would with something like Eberron or the Drow City. With the different factions, you've obviously thought about that, you've gone into that, and then there's a reasoning behind that. I would like to say that you've probably got key figures in each house, and rough, and you've got it mapped out in your brain. Same with Ravenloft. Just absorb it and work with it, and then you will get 10 times the enjoyment out of it.
Well, thank you. That's fantastic advice to bring out the show. Yeah. So all that's left to say is thank you ever so much, John, for joining us today. As I said earlier, your passion is infectious, and I entered this episode with very little appreciation and understanding of Ravenloft, and I've come out now planning it into my campaign. So that's a success, I think.
Mission accomplished.
Indeed.
My work here is done. No, absolutely. And I apologise if I spoke too much, but like I said, I'm a passionate person. So, and we'll talk some more about project management somewhere else.
So yes, thank you to everybody for listening at home. As usual, find me at thinkingcritically.co.uk. Otherwise, thank you all for listening, and good night. Now it's time for the Patreon shoutouts. Huge thank you to all my patrons, starting with Josh, Lewanika, and Glenn, the 3 fabulous hosts of Tabletop Journeys who've been on the show several times before and who I'll always invite back. So go check out Tabletop Journeys at ttjourneys.com or at ttjourneys on Twitter. We also have Joe from the Fourth Leg podcast all about giving DMs another leg to stand on. Again, previous guests of the show, and I'd thoroughly encourage you to go and check out their great content. So you can find them at the Fourth Leg on Twitter. We have a good friend of the show, Optional Rule. You can go and find him out on optionalrule.com or at Optional Rule, full of very insightful and educated comments and thoughts and threads on the really nitty-gritty of D&D. We have, what a guy, Matthew Perkins, who is just out there in the world trying to make you laugh. So go and check him out at matthewperkins.net or at Hey It's Matty P, Mattyp. And good friend of the show and one of my table mates, Matthew Street. Go and check out his partner's hustle at virtualtimehustle.com or at mpstreet88 on Twitter.